You can go ahead now, Sandra. Thank you.
Thank you. It's still a good morning. And my name is Sandra Scholl, and I'm the chair of the Toronto Preservation Board. The clerk has confirmed that we have quorum, so I'd like to now call meeting 15 to order. Welcome, everybody. This meeting is being held using the city's WebEx technology, with members and staff connecting by video conferencing or calling in. Because we are meeting remotely, we ask you for your patience and spades. With any delays and technical issues, members of the public can observe the meeting on YouTube. We currently have speakers who have been connected to the meeting by audio. The list of speakers can be viewed online by visiting the Toronto Preservation Board page at toronto.ca/council and clicking the speakers box for today's meeting. I would like to request that staff keep their video turned off unless they need to speak or answer questions. This will make it easier for me as chair and for those watching on YouTube to observe members as they participate in the debate on each item and during votes. Staff or to speak. This will also assist the clerk staff in recording member attendance for the minutes of the meeting. I also ask that all members and staff keep their microphones on mute unless you need to answer a question or speak. If any members do, please make sure you raise your hand on your mic and indicate your intention to speak, and I will create a speakers list. One of the things is wave right in front of your face. That's what I've learned on this technology. Members, I want to remind you that although members are participating remotely, you must still submit your motions in writing to the clerk. The clerk's staff are available by email at teycc@toronto.ca. That's Toronto and East York, TEYCC for Community Council at toronto.ca to help you with motion. Although we are in different locations and meeting remotely today, the board would like to acknowledge that the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Now, are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you do have an interest, please raise your hands or unmute your mic. Okay, seeing none. Next, we need a motion.
Oh, sorry. It's Kim. Sorry here. I just wanted to say for the grant application item, I have a conflict of interest with regard to South Humber Washington Pavilion. I just wanted to register that.
Okay. And anyone else? I've just lost all of your views again. Hold on. There. Wait a sec. Excuse me 1 second. I'm not seeing the gallery view.
Excuse me, Sandra, it's Ellen. I'm sorry,
Yes?
but we didn't quite catch, was that a declaration of interest that Kim Story was declaring? And if so, we need her to repeat it.
Oh, okay. Kim?
Okay, I have I'm not sure. I think it's a conflict of interest because I have an involvement with that peripheral involvement with the grant application item for the Oculus for the South Humber Pavilion. That comes up in the grant. It's for information only about the grant applications that have been made, or that the grants that have been made. So I just wanted to register that. That's necessary.
Ellen, was that any clearer to you? Because it was not, I know what she's trying to say, but was it clear enough for you?
Yes, perhaps, Kim, if you would send me a quick email just with some of that language, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Kim, do you have the address? Are you okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next, we need a motion to confirm the minutes from our last meeting on February 28, 2020. Okay. All in favor?
Sandra, I don't know who the mover is.
I can't. Pardon?
Could you identify who's moving the motion, please?
Okay. Sorry. Jeff will move the motion. I'm sorry. All in favor? Are there any opposed? That's carried. Okay, let's proceed with the agenda review. First item is 15.1, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 65 George Street. There is a staff report with recommendations. Would anyone like to hold this item? If so, please raise your hand or unmute your mic to let me know.
Hold, please.
I'm sorry, Paul? Okay, so this item is held. Okay, our next item is 15.2, alterations to a heritage property and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement, 582 King Street West. We have a speaker registered on this item, so it's a hold. Our next item is 15.3, alterations to a property designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 129 Bedford Road, Ward 11. We have a registered speaker on this item, so I will hold. Our next item is 15.4, amendment of designating bylaw to correct legal description of 206 Russell Hill Road, Ward 12. There is a staff report. Paul?
I'd like to move acceptance.
Okay. So Paul has moved to move the recommendations in the report. All in favor? I can't see, Ellen. Here we go. Okay. Any opposed? Okay, that item carried. Our next item is PB 15.5, inclusion on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, an intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 501 Vesta Drive, Ward 12. We have a speaker registered on the item, so I'll hold it. And then our next item is PB 15.6, inclusion on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, 106 to 114 Queen Street East, Ward 13. We have a speaker registered on this item, so I will hold it down. Our next item is PB 15.7, inclusion on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Alterations to a heritage property and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement, 1150 Eglinton Avenue East, Ward 16. We have a speaker registered on this item, so I will hold it down. Our next item is PB 15.8, inclusion on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, alterations to a heritage property an authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement, 292 Main Street, Ward 19. We have speakers to register on this item, so I will hold it down. And then our next item is PB 15.9, 2020 Toronto Heritage Grants Awards. There are no recommendations. Would anyone like to hold this item? If so, please raise your hand. Paul?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so this item is held down. And then the final item, our next item is PB 15.10, Preservation Panel Minutes. There are no recommendations. Would anyone like to hold this item? If so, please raise your hands. Okay, there is no one. So can we move to, can I have someone to move to receive for information? This is an information. Barbara, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. So that includes the agenda rundown. I'm just going back to this. Okay, so we have to go back. Ellen is, I believe we have to go back to 15.1, not 15.2.
That's right.
Okay. I do not have a large enough desk to chair this meeting by WebEx. I'm sorry, hold on one sec. Okay, so item 15.1, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 65 George Street. Do we have an introduction by staff? Is there no introduction?
Sandra, there should be an introduction, but Yasmin is just setting up her sharing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you.
It's okay.
Sandra, we see a presentation on the screen. Mary, we're not sure if someone's proceeding yet or they're still preparing to give the presentation.
Hi, I assume there's a staff presentation. I'm going to ask Tamara to let us know.
Good morning, everyone. It's Tamara Anson-Cartwright. My colleague Mary Beth McTeague prepared the report, and she is going to give a 5-minute introduction to 65 George Street. So I'll mute myself and let Mary Beth speak. Thank you.
Sandra, we cannot hear Mary Beth at all.
Sorry, I know that. Where is Mary Beth? There.
Mary Beth has not signed into the meeting as yet.
Tomorrow, can you give the presentation?
If you could just beg my indulgence, I will call Mary Beth and see if there's a technical difficulty. I would suggest if so, then we might advance to the next item. Hold on a second, please.
I've had some back and forth with Mary Beth, and it keeps telling me that her connection is getting lost to WebEx. The WebEx system is telling me that, not Mary Beth, because I keep trying to chat with her. She is around. She's trying.
It just said she lost her connection 4 minutes ago, so she's trying again.
Shall we just proceed to 15.2 and come back to 15.1 then?
Yes, why don't you go on to number 2 then? Thank you.
Okay, Yasmina, can you please put 15.2 on? Great, okay. Who's presenting 15.2?
I am. Can you hear me? This is Georgia Cush.
Georgia, you're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, great. Good morning. The proposal before the Toronto Preservation Board today is to allow for the construction of a mixed-use building in conjunction with an appeal to the Local Planning Appeal Tribunal on the property at 582 King Street West. And just a reminder, there was a staff report recommending designation of the property under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, which was adopted by the Toronto Preservation Board on February 28th, and also by City Council on June 30th. So the property is designated. Next slide, please. So this property is located on the north side of King Street West, and it includes a complex of factory buildings that were constructed between 1902 and 1911 by the Canadian Kodak Company Limited, with frontages both on King and Adelaide Streets, as well as a garage building on Adelaide, which was constructed for a subsequent owner circa 1928-1931. Next slide, please. So here's the building facing King Street West, and it is actually comprised of 2 buildings that were built 2 years apart. It's a 4-story factory building, which at its eastern end extends all the way north to Adelaide Street, where it presents a frontage along that street. Next slide. Here's the long side west elevation shown here, which faces Portland Street, over a current parking lot, which is actually part of the site, which will be redeveloped. Next slide, please. And here's a view of the same building on Adelaide, looking in the other direction. And I want to draw your attention to the painted sign at the top of the building. It says Lovable. And also shown in this picture is the 1-story garage building. Next slide, please. Now, the proposal conserves in full the whole of the buildings at 582 to 592 King and 473 Adelaide Street West. And it incorporates them into a new 10 to 12-story commercial development. The 1-story garage building is proposed to be demolished. Next slide, please. Interventions to the original building fabric will be very limited and only made where necessary. Now, along with whole building conservation, the new development will include glazed connections and appropriate step backs in order to allow the 3-dimensional integrity of the buildings to be viewed. Staff acknowledged that the proposal would result in the removal of the garage building, which is an attribute, but it is believed that the conservation strategy for the factory buildings, and that is whole building conservation, fully meets the city's official plan policies as well as the Kings Spadina Heritage Conservation District plan. And that balances the loss of that attribute. Overall, staff support the alterations in the context of a potential LPAT settlement. So now Chris Borgel is the heritage consultant for the applicant, and he will provide more details on the proposal.
Welcome, Chris. We'll see you soon. And you just remember that you're limited to 5 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can everybody else? I can't see everybody else. So speak up or forever hold your peace. Okay, Chris.
Yes, unfortunately, I'm only on the telephone. I couldn't come in on WebEx, but
That's fine.
I think that this is actually an excellent project in the sense that it preserves buildings in whole. The one loss is the small garage opening, which has in fact been modified. It was later than the original heritage buildings on site, and there has been some effort to preserve the lovable sign on the top of the building on Richmond Street. The step backs on King Street have been negotiated. There's extensive negotiations both for step backs to the sides of the properties and to the street front, which preserves from the street view a very significant amount of the visual appreciation of the building in 3 dimensions. And in fact, this one is in 3 dimensions. It's not merely a front of a building, it's the whole building, which is encapsulated within the new development. So I think this is a very strong heritage proposal, and in my view, it sets a new bar for some work in that part of Toronto. And that's really all my presentation at the moment. I have no visuals. Thank you.
Are there any questions to Mr. Borgel? Hands in front of face if are. No? None? Great, then thank you. Oh, wait a sec. Hold on. Robert?
Yes, I understand that the building top of the to be structured without penetrating the existing building. Is that?
That's correct. The structure comes down either side. There may be some intrusion into the existing building, but essentially the interiors remain intact.
Remarkable. New on existing building. Am I correct in that?
I'm sorry, you broke up there. I couldn't hear you. Could you say that again?
Well, in the axonometric views, it's unclear whose structure is coming on the outside of the building.
That's correct.
I don't see it on the axonometric.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't got in front of me here. I'm talking blind, but essentially every effort has been made to preserve the building in 3 dimensions as well as the building interiors. There will be some intrusions to the interior of the existing building simply logistically to meet codes and so on, but the bulk of the building interior and exterior is preserved.
And the report states that the existing tenants will remain in operation through construction.
I believe so.
Brilliant.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, speak now or forever. I think we're good, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Very much. Okay, are there any questions of staff now? There are no other, I'm sorry, Ellen, there are no other speakers, are there?
There are no other speakers, Sandra. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any questions of staff? Okay, oh, Robert?
Is it simply the stable, I guess it garage or something that was correct?
So the alterations include the removal of that garage building on Adelaide Street and the overall proposal and the alterations on the whole site.
Do you have any further comments on that, Robert, or are you good? I mean, questions. We're not up to discussion, but is there anything else anyone needs to know?
Well, what I'm uncertain of is from the LPAT decisions, there seems to be the question of demolishing that garage section seems to be the contentious issue here. Is that correct?
Well, I wouldn't say that there's a contentious issue here. Staff are supportive of the application as a whole.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Frank, did you have a question? We can't hear you. Here. Ellen, is Frank unmuted?
Frank is unmuted, perhaps at his end. Frank, could you check?
Just see lips.
I'm sorry, Frank, we can't hear you. Could you just check and see that you're unmuted? Thank you.
Says he's unmuted. I can see his lip. Become a lip reader since the COVID-19. Here. Ellen, I mean, if he sent an email, but would that help?
If you, Frank, if you send us an email, then we will have a look at it and try to troubleshoot, okay? At teycc@toronto.ca.
Ellen, do we now have to hold till the email comes?
No, I'm afraid you'll have to move on.
Okay. Sorry about that. Any other comment or questions rather? Okay, discussion amongst us. Anything you want to raise? Any comments to fellow members? Robert?
It seems to me that this is a very good solution that keeps almost all of the existing building and allows for the operations of those existing buildings to continue. I think it perhaps represents a model that we should be asking for in other projects, rather than hollowing out existing buildings, putting something else inside them, and putting another building on top. The only, I think, what will make this or break this as a great scheme will be how well the upper part of the new part of the building is handled. I mean, at the moment, we're seeing very diagrammatic elevations. The only odd thing I think about it architecturally is the piece of Boston City Hall at the corner of Portland and Adelaide. The stepped out portion in the new part of the building on the corner there. And as a minor item on King Street, the bay that projects forward of the setback in the middle of the building seems to be a rather odd addition to the massing. But otherwise, I think that I think is where this scheme will become a model or not in the completion of the new building, and it's finessing. It suggests at the moment as though it's a fully glazed building, which it seems to me would be unfortunate. Some kind of curtain wall system, but that's not clear from the drawing. I think this is probably a good example too, where our board is being asked to comment on something when everything is completed. We've had no opportunity to see this in advance, and I think this is a prime example of a very large scheme that's coming to us at the very last minute, so we have very little opportunity to influence anything other than to reject it or otherwise. And in this case, I have no concern about accepting this and recommending this for acceptance.
If I can interject right there, this did come to us on February 28th in our meeting of February. And at that time, the Toronto Preservation Board adopted recommendations to designate the property. And if it's on page 4 of the report, the item was to have been then considered by City Council on April 1st, but was delayed due to the declaration of the emergency. So it's not totally unknown to us. My original question was going to be, what's the difference between what we saw okay.
Well, my point is, I think we should have seen it 2 years ago.
Taken. Paul?
Yeah, well, I would just like to echo Bob's comments and congratulate the HPS Heritage Planning for the Heritage Easement agreements on 3 really good buildings. So it's a great win. Thank you.
Frank? Try again. Okay, sorry, Frank. Anyone else?
Hi, Sandra, it's Kim. I'm sorry, I'm waving my arm, but I don't know if you can see me.
I can't see you. Where are you? You're not showing your video to me.
Oh, sorry, I was before.
There you are.
Okay.
Yes.
I am.
Okay.
Okay, I was wondering if this project had gone to the design review panel, and whether there were any comments. I guess we don't generally see the design review panel comment, but it would have been interesting to see that if this project has been reviewed by the design review panel. It certainly satisfies the heritage components architecturally. I find quite a few things wanting in it, but that's not our role to comment on. So it would have been interesting to see design review panel comments if there are any.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, can I ask someone to recommend staff recommendations? Robert? All in favor, hands up. Any opposed? It's carried. Okay, I see Mary Beth. I see her M. And so I'm wondering if we can go back to 15.1 now. Hi, Mary Beth.
Mary Beth, we can't hear you. You need to connect to your audio. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So good morning. I'm here to present the report in item 15.1, which recommends that City Council state its intention to designate the listed heritage property at 65 George Street that contains the Little York and Coach House under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act for its cultural heritage value. Located on the east side of George Street, south of King Street East, the property at 65 George was listed on the Heritage Register in 1984.
Sorry to interrupt you, Mary Beth, but we don't see the presentation being up on the screen from Yasmina.
Okay.
I'm trying to share it, but my share button isn't popping up, so I'm not sure what happened. Okay.
Try it again, Yasmina, please.
Yeah. Okay, it's up.
Okay. Thank you. The building was constructed in 1880 to provide stables and a coach house for the adjacent property at 187 King Street East, the Little York Hotel, which was completed the year before in 1879 and has been designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it just says you're starting to share content, and then I can see a thing saying viewing her content, but I don't see it. I just see one little box that that just brings up my gallery view. Does everyone else see it on their screen? Oh, rats. Okay, she said professionally.
Sandra, we can see the presentation now. Can you?
I can't. Wait a sec. Let me try. I can see a square with it, but I can't bring it up. I can only see it as a tiny thing. Okay, let me see. What can I do?
Yasmina, in the meantime, can you go to the next slide, please?
Yeah, just go. I'll listen.
Okay. Thank you.
And Mary Beth, you can give instruction to Yasmina if the slide isn't on the place you need it to be.
Lovely, thanks. So we're seeing the property data map right now with the location. Yasmina, you could go to the next one. Thank you. And that's just an aerial view. And the next one, please. Thank you. Together with the adjoining Little York Hotel, the Little York Stables and Coach House building has design and physical value as it represents a rare building type. Although there have been alterations, the original function of the stables coach house and its relationship to the adjacent hotel building is still legible through the shared red brickwork cladding, decorative string courses, and round arched window openings, which with the monumental carriage opening are representative of a well-crafted high Victorian style hotel stables and hotel and stables complex. The complex has historic value as it was designed by the Toronto architects Langley, and Burke, and has a shared 140-year history as a commercial establishment in the historic old town of York. Included in the St. Lawrence Neighborhood Heritage Conservation District, adopted by City Council in 2015 and currently under appeal. Mina, please go to the next slide. Thank you. The Little York Hotel complex is important for maintaining and defining the scale and character of the neighborhood as it is historically functional and visually linked to its context. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? No other speakers? Then are there any questions of Mary Beth? Jeff? Jeff, we can't hear you.
Jeff, you need to turn your audio on. You're not connected to the mic. We can see that you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. You're not connected to the mic. Go ahead. I think you just need to unmute yourself now. You seem to be connected now.
Try now. Oops, no, it keeps going on.
Try now, Jeff.
I was only going to raise the issue that there was a letter from a lawyer. I thought there was a speaker for this item, actually. But the lawyer has concerns that this is not valid as a heritage property. And my feeling was that there was a very good report, the staff report. The property was previously listed a few years after the hotel property, and there was every validity for it to go forward as designation. But you haven't heard any more from the lawyer.
Hi, Jeff. This is Mary. We received a letter like you did along with this package, and I have no further information if they haven't chosen to speak today.
They didn't present any information. They simply said they were opposed to the to this moving forward.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions of Mary Beth? Okay, thank you, Mary Beth. And now, do we have anything we want to discuss between us? Okay, oops, Paul, yes?
Just move the staff recommendation.
Okay. All those who wish to adopt, raise your hands, please. Are there any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, so now we are going on to item 3, which is alterations to a property designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act, 129 Bedford Road. And who is introducing this on staff? And Yasmin, I believe we have a small presentation. We were sent one, I know. My goodness.
I'm the staff member. Nathan, can you hear me, everybody?
Yes, we can hear you, Nathan. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Nathan Borland. I'm presenting item 15.3 on 129 Bedford Road. 129 Bedford Road features a detached house located at the corner of Bedford Road and Bernard Avenue, which was constructed between 1890 and 1899. I can go to the next slide, please. The location map showing it at the corner, southwest, so east corner of it, sorry, and both of the site plan we've been showing proposal to a new front, a new door where there's an existing window open on the Bernard side. This building is a Category C property within the East Annex Heritage Conservation District. And as per the East Annex Heritage Conservation District study document, C properties retain much of their original character and are vital reminders of the community's past. And study guidelines contain guidelines generally do not make alterations or additions to the facade of the buildings except for such alterations are meant to restore the original appearance of the building. We received a building permit application to convert a window to a door, and this is a street-facing facade, so that's why we're talking about this today. Go to the next slide, please. This is the facade facing Bernard Avenue, or Bedford Road. You can not easily see the existing front entrance door. Go to the next slide. This is the north facade, and there's the window in question where there's a black arrow pointing through it. The drawing showing where the closing door. This is being proposed is to potentially improve access to the house along this facade. Consider these alterations to be minor and not anticipated to have significant impact on the appearance of the building and the functional public realm. We also from that drawing there's a new porch with steps as well. And I think that if this is adequately screened landscaping, this is for conditions that building permit drawings are to our satisfaction and that we receive the detailed landscape plan. We have this new porch and door can be seen. I understand that the has a presentation to follow. Right?
Okay. Are there any other speakers, Alan?
It would be questions of staff. Pardon me, we do have a speaker. Sorry, Sandra, I apologize. We do have a deputant on this item. Stephanie.
Okay, so we have to hear from the deputant first, and then we would question staff, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so thank you, Nathan. And now we're going to hear from the deputant, and I'm sorry I don't have your name.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Vermeulen. I'm the architect on this project. I actually don't have very much new information to add beyond what Nathan has already explained to you. We have been asked by our clients to add a secondary door on this north elevation along Bernard Avenue to improve access from the parking spot and garage, which are at the rear of the property. And this location where we're proposing it can allow it to share the interior sort of entry space with the front door. So we've worked with Heritage's recommendation to essentially match the existing front door transom. And the only alteration to the existing opening will be to lower the sill down to the ground. That's about it.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Do we have any questions of Stephanie? Okay. Speak once, twice, thrice, sold. Okay, Stephanie, thank you very much.
You're welcome, thanks.
Are there any questions of Nathan? Back to staff. Okay, thank you, Nathan. Are there any comments we want to make amongst us? Robert?
This does seem an item that the board really shouldn't be looking at. It seems to me this is a staff. Staff could easily make the decisions in this case. But I don't see the necessity for it to be on our agenda.
Okay, any other comments? I can say, I'm sorry?
Sorry, it's Mary. If any of the members want clarification on that comment, I'm happy to give it.
Sure.
You have to go, well, you'd have to go back to questions of staff. I just, it felt like it landed without any response and not as a question.
I ask if we go back to questions.
Yes, please. So, Mary, why is it on the agenda?
Thank you. I agree with you. This is a very minor item. However, staff's delegated authority is quite clear under the municipal code in that visible alterations to heritage properties within the heritage conservation districts that are not in keeping with the district plan require a council decision. And so while this is a very minor alteration, and thank you for understanding that staff actually could move forward on this without any additional advice, it's a great job and very minor. But because you're not supposed to alter visible openings within the district plan, we are required to get a dispensation essentially from council to allow them to do this.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Jeff?
To clarify, is that a requirement of this particular HCD or a requirement more generally?
This particular HCD.
Okay.
Anyone else? Paul?
Move the staff recommendation.
Okay, all in favor? Anyone opposed? Carried. Okay, we jump, 15.4 was Russell Hill, so we jump right to 15.5, Vesta Drive. And who is presenting on behalf of staff?
Give us a second to get ourselves together here.
Okay. Who's presenting?
Again, this will be Mary Beth. Thank you. It's Tamara.
Whenever you're ready.
Mary Beth, we can't hear you.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Great.
Can't see you though, Mary Beth.
I think you can see me now. So, right, I'm here to present the report in item 15.5, which recommends that City Council state its intention to designate the property at 501 Vesta Drive under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act for its cultural heritage value. Next slide, please. Following research and evaluation, staff have determined that the property meets the criteria in OREG 906 under all three categories of design, associative, and contextual values. Next, please. Lady Edith J. Bailey House at 501 Vesta Drive has design value as an excellent representative of the arts and crafts movement with Tudor revival style details. Located on the east side of Vesta Drive, just north of the junction with Old Forest Hill Road, the property at 501 Vesta has contextual value as it forms part of a collection of residential properties constructed in the 1930s, which provide a cohesive architectural character through their shared qualities of scale, form, and massing, materials, and details, with landscape setbacks and mature trees, which contribute to a sense of place within this part of Forest Hill. Property has associative value as the house was designed by the important architect Douglas E. Kirtland and reflects the early history of Forest Hill Village. Originally owned by the philanthropist Lady Edith J. Bailey, widow of Sir Frank Wilton Bailey, KBE, the house was later owned for over 60 years by the prominent construction magnate and philanthropist Maury Wingold and his wife Sarah Wingold. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Beth. And I believe we have a number of speakers. Is that correct, Ellen?
Yes, we do have a deputant, Michael Ansosek, and he is with us.
Deputant? Okay. Michael?
Yep. Hello?
Yep. Go ahead.
Hi. Hi.
You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to say I am the individual who originally nominated this property back in October of 2018. And since then, I have worked with Councillor Josh Matlow's office, Heritage Preservation Services, and all of the direct neighbors of this property at 93 Old Forest Hill Road, 99, 504, and a few others who are all in complete support of this heritage designation. And we would just like to thank again everyone. The staff report outlined all of the architectural and historical merit. And yes, just like to again say that we are in full support of this designation. All the neighboring residents are. Thank you.
Marvelous. Thank you. Are there any questions of Michael? And I'm sorry, Robert, do you have a question? No. Yes? No. Okay, Michael, thank you so much. All I want to say is good for you.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions of staff? Jeff?
I just wanted to ask what the status was of the planning application. I presume this is at T-Lab, but maybe you can indicate, staff can indicate the status of the application.
I'll ask Ann Fisher to comment on that to the extent that she's able to.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we sought designation of this property because there was applications into the Committee of Adjustment, one for a severance, and there were applications for minor variances in order to sever this lot and build 2 houses on there. The severance application has been withdrawn, but there are still 2 minor variance applications outstanding. I'm not sure what's happening with them yet because they haven't got a severance. We did meet with the property owner to see if there were alterations we could do to the property, but we haven't received any further information from them.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, discussion among us. Thank you, Anne. Paul?
I move the staff recommendation.
Okay, all in favor? Hands up. Any opposed? Carried. Sorry. Okay, now we move on to item 15.6. Inclusion on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, 106 to 114 Queen Street East. Who is presenting on this one? Liz?
Hi there. Yes, Liz McFarlane.
Okay, and here we go. Yasmina's sharing. Good. We're good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so located on the north side of Queen Street East, between Mutual and Jarvis Streets, and adjacent to the landmark Heritage Bigley Building at 98 Queen Street East, the 5 brick-clad 3-story buildings at 106 to 114 Queen Street East comprise part of a longer row of... can you hear me?
You come in and out. Is
that better?
Yes.
Okay. So these 5 buildings comprise part of a longer row of 8 buildings now known as Musson Terrace, which were all completed together by John C. Musson in 1886 to 1887. And following research and evaluation, it's been determined that the properties at this location at 106 to 114 Queen Street East meet Ontario Regulation 906, the criteria prescribed for municipal designation under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act for their design, associative, and contextual value. Slide, please. Collection provides a consistent stretch of late Victorian-era building fabric valued for its importance in defining and maintaining the late 19th century character of the area. The properties at 106 to 114 Queen Street East contribute contextually to the historic residential and commercial character of the area and are visually, physically, and historically linked to their setting inside the southern boundary of the city's Garden District neighborhood and along Main Street, Queen. Slide, please. The 8 properties comprising Musson Terrace, so that would be all of what you're seeing here, that's 100 to 114 Queen Street East, are valued as part of an intact collection of historic buildings representing an entire surviving block of the early urban subdivision development of Queen Street East, where residential and commercial typologies flourished alongside the adjacent churches, such as the heritage property at Metropolitan United Church. The 3 properties to the west in this photograph at 100 to 104 and are not subject of this report. They are, however, subject of a separate report going forward to City Council shortly, I believe next cycle, recommending their designation under Section 29, Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, as they form part of an active development site and application. This report recommends that the properties 106 to 114 Queen Street East be included on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register in accordance with the Statement of Significance attached as Attachment 3, I believe, to the June 3rd, 2020 report from the Senior Manager, Heritage Planning, City Plan Division. That's it.
Okay, are there any deputants, Ellen? Ellen?
One moment, please.
You?
Sandra, I think that Mr. Tran can hear us, but he's not connected. So we can't access, let him speak then.
Okay. He's on
Would you
the
wait just
telephone,
one
right?
moment, please, okay? Thank you.
Let's try. Okay, thank you.
We're going to make our best effort, Sandra, so just please stand by.
Sure.
Hi, James. It's Matthew Green from the City Clerk's Office. If you're looking on your WebEx console, one of the little circled buttons down at the bottom should look like a microphone. If you can connect to that, that's to connect your audio. You should be able to connect, but if you can give that a try, and we'll see if we can hear you. James, alternately up at the top of your WebEx console, there's a button for communicate. Oh, there goes.
Are we here?
No, he's gone. He's not actually on there anymore.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes?
Ah, okay, finally.
Thanks, you're back. Making some progress.
I think you've got to go in manually and connect to microphone. That's what I finally did. So maybe that's a problem.
Okay, so excuse me. Sorry. So we cannot seem to connect with James Tran. I'm sorry. So I think you'll have to move on.
Okay, I'm very sorry too. Okay, are there any questions of staff? I can't see the group, Ellen. I can't see our board members. I can only see the presentation. Okay, yes.
I have a question.
Wait a sec. Excuse me. Alex, first, please.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, I was just wondering what the rationale was in going for listing and not going for designation. Is it a political development issue or what? Thank you.
Alex, this is Mary. I guess there are a couple of answers to that. One is because we have picked up these properties while we were doing the research on the properties under development. We didn't want to complicate matters by designating the whole thing, and neither did we want to necessarily go through all of the appeals process that a designation would entail should the owner not be happy with being designated. It also allows us to spend some time with the owner to give them some information about what listing means. So it's easing someone onto the register, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Thank you. Any other questions, Alex? Okay, but Frank is next. Sorry, and then
that was my question.
Okay, Robert.
Sorry, I'm busy unmuting myself. Regard the Bigley building and 100 to 104 Queen East, their status, and why these are not seen as a single street composition.
Our original intention was to have both reports at the same meeting. And so they were both, the development application and the designation of the Bigley property and the properties included in that development, and this one. but there was a hiccup in the planning report, and they have to go to TYCC at the same time. So you'll be seeing that report in August. And since this was ready, we chose to get on and defer as well, because it's not related directly to development.
Supplementary to that, then, would it make sense to try to prepare the full designation for the 106114?
No, we made the decision as staff to move forward with the listing at this time.
Yes, but the Bigley and 100 to 104 is coming later in the fall, I think you're saying.
I know you'll see it in at the August meeting.
Oh, I see. Okay, so okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you, Liz. So discussion amongst us? No, I think just one. Yes, Robert?
It does seem unfortunate that this entire row and the Bigley building are not dealt with in one fell swoop. I mean, they are clearly architecturally all part of the same package, and it's a pity that they're not combined.
Any other comments? I think we sort of understand, but I see where staff is coming from as well. I mean, instead of trying to just pounce on somebody, if it can be a gentle discussion, I think that's a good idea. We'll see what happens. Frank, do you have a question?
I just wanted to say I agree. I don't know why we're not handling this all as one package, but I understand the sensitivities that the staff has to deal with.
Okay, can I have, if there are no other comments, which I don't think there are, can I have a motion to move? Yeah, Julia? All in favor? And don't believe there are any opposed? Okay, it's carried. So now we are moving to item 15.7, inclusion on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, alterations to a heritage property and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement. 1150 Eglinton Avenue East. Who is presenting?
Hi, you're going to have a few presenters for this one, but I wanted to give an introduction to the introductions, which is related to the overall development that's happening in this area and the timing of this report. And just a reminder of where we've been on this file. Originally, when the development was being discussed for this site, this property was recommended for designation, and the board reviewed the designation report at that time. I'm sure the link is in your package. And so the property was recommended for designation, and the Community Council, North York Community Council, did defer the report pending the outcome of the development conversation. And so we continue to work on the application, and that was at the same time as the other building on this site, 875 Don Mills, was also deferred. So we were unable to move forward with anything at the time because the property was not designated. Subsequently, there were appeals and settlements, and we continue to work, but we continue to work with without a designation in place. And there was an LPAT settlement, and the settlement spelled out what the conservation strategy would be, and it spelled out the process, meaning there would have to be a designation and an easement and approval of alterations by City Council. So this was coming to you last March, but obviously it got bumped until now. But I do wanted to remind members that the designation itself has been already adopted by the board, but because it was deferred as a standalone report at Community Council and never came back onto an agenda, we had to run it back through in this kind of packaged way. So if you have any further questions about that, it's kind of complicated. And we are seemingly coming in way late, but this is the earliest we could bring this back to you as a board. We're going to have two presentations. One is just a review again of the heritage values of the property, and then a brief presentation on the alterations. Thanks.
So I'm here to present the portion of the report in item 15.7, which recommends that City Council state its intention to designate the property at 1150 Eglinton Avenue East under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act for its cultural heritage value. Following research and evaluation, staff have determined that the property meets the criteria in OREG 906 under all three categories of design, associative, and contextual values. The 1966 to 67 IBM headquarters building at 1150 Eglinton Avenue East is valued for its associations with the history of the IBM Corporation. Next, thank you. The development of the industrial manufacturing sector of Don Mills and the prolific modernist architectural firm of John B. Park and Associates. Could we see the next slide, please? And that shows the location of the property on the north section of Eglinton Avenue East, just to the west of Don Mills Road. Could we see the next one, please? Thank you. Nominated for the Massey Medal of Architecture in 1970, the building has design value for its late modern style, which rejected the technological bias of early modernism in favor of a more organic approach, evident in the response to the natural qualities of the Don River Valley site. As a corporate headquarters for Canada, this was an innovative design approach for both IBM and Park and Associates. Contextually, the building has been a landmark, emphasizing the natural topography of the ravine site and contributes to the sequence of high-quality designed, third-quarter 20th century modernist structures that characterize Don Mills. Thank you.
Okay, Ellen, how should we be proceeding? Because there's two staff.
There is, I'm not sure if the presentation is complete, so the staff should finish the presentation.
So you want the second person of staff first, and then we will go to any external presentations. Is that correct?
Yes, and you'll go to the deputant.
Okay. So who is our next staff person presenting?
Can anybody hear me?
Yes. Is that you, Paul?
It is Joseph Muller. Thank you.
It's Joseph
Program
Muller.
Manager. Yes, Program Manager. I'm so glad that you can hear me. Well, thank you. So I will just flesh out a bit of the description. So as Mary Beth provided the background on this, the building is presently located on the top of a hill overlooking Eglinton Avenue and the Don River Ravine, and has been identified as having cultural heritage value. So the development proposal itself, if we can move forward one slide, involves 5 buildings within Block 12 of the 60-acre master planned crosstown community. And if we can move ahead one slide. So
It includes 3 residential towers, which you see here, of 32, 39, and 34 stories, respectively, located behind the south facade of the IBM building. The proposal incorporates approximately 50% of the total elevations of the IBM building as a base building. The entire extent of the original front elevation of the IBM building is being retained in situ and incorporated within the base building of the towers. And this elevation is the most significant as it's highly visible from Eglinton Avenue. The west side elevation also incorporates a significant proportion of the original walls. The east elevation includes a return of the original walls, while the south or rear elevation is mostly new construction. So I can now pass it on to the applicant, who will provide a more detailed overview of the proposal. Thanks for forwarding through the images.
Thank you. And who is the applicant, please?
Sandra, the staff presentation is finished then, I assume. So the deputant is Nicholas Barrett, and we do have him. So just give us a moment, please.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so as Mary Beth and Joe mentioned, there has been considerable influence by staff on this project. So my objective today is really to summarize our response to these comments, and also comments from design review panel members resulting from alterations from the building at 1150 Eglinton East. So this has been a highly collaborative project. With input from planning, sustainability, landscape, heritage, and architectural design disciplines. Over the past 6 years, numerous milestones have been made. Central to this have been the adoption of an official plan amendment, a zoning bylaw amendment, a draft subdivision plan, and we've had over 3 design review panel meetings. So if my slide is present, I'll just, I don't see it, but if it's visible to you. So we're focusing right now on the south.
Not at the Sorry, just one moment. Yasmina, can you share the screen again? And put up the deputant's presentation? It was up before.
Yasmina, you do have the screen now.
Okay. And I will try to be as brisk as possible because the summary from Joe was fairly thorough. Okay, so let's move to the next slide, please. So in the top left-hand corner, we're looking at the building as constructed in 1967 for the IBM Canada headquarters, designed by John B. Parkin. And to the right, there is a superimposed footprint of both the property at 844 Don Mills and the Parkin building in the bottom left-hand corner. If we can move to the next slide. Zooming in on the southwest corner is Block 12. And this component of the project will involve the rehabilitation of the Parkin building into a multi-unit residential development. The new construction will incorporate half of the original 1967 Parkin building through facade retention. So moving on to the next slide. So 4 major themes have guided our conservation approach. Broadly speaking, this includes massing and composition, landscape setting, elevations, and materials. The facade retention strategy will incorporate all key character-defining features of the building and conserve its landmark status by retaining in situ all facades facing Eglinton Avenue. This includes maintaining the solid brick planes and sequence of narrow piers and bays, the black anodized aluminum window frames and spandrel panels, the dark metal coping, and the solar bronze tinted glass. Next slide, please. The plan on the left highlights the entire linear length of the facade, and for the entire building as is, that's around 1 kilometer. So in light orange is the total length to be retained, which is around 551 meters, or 49.7% of the building. To the right is a conceptual diagram illustrating the proposed retention strategy by Jablonski. It employs various techniques which range from exterior bracing to piles to interior retention systems, given some of the contextual complications and its position on the landscape. Next slide, please. 5 major building components are proposed within Block 12. This includes 3 mixed-use condominium towers, 32, 39, and 34 stories as shown. These will be located within the former footprint of the Parkin building, utilizing the heritage base as its plinth, or in other words, a podium. So setbacks and reveals behind the retained building will give appropriate references to the original scale of the heritage building. So to the next slide. And I'll move quickly through these because these are surrounding buildings, but I want to give the impression that the surrounding buildings do have compatible gestures in terms of materials and massing, and they make appropriate references to the scale of the Parkin building, which can be seen in the back. So to the next slide. We're looking here at the entrance to 3 levels of and it's also a point where the heritage fabric terminates and the new construction begins. So the new fabric is designed with a clear distinction between what is historic and what is new, while introducing compatible materiality. To the next slide, please. And in addition, furthering that point about compatible materials and scale, we'll move on to the next slide. Part of the proposal also includes 18 townhouses, and there's a reference here to the modern form and expression of the Parkin building. We'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so we're addressing comments from a staff report on February 14th, 2020, exploring issues arising from some of the modifications that were made and some of the discussions based on the addition of the new building into the footprint. I've circled 2 primary elements, which is to the top is the east courtyard, a freestanding wall, and below that, window and balcony openings, and I'll quickly discuss those. So we'll move on to the next slide. So images in gray on the left-hand side of this slide show October 12th, 2017 and April 12th, 2019 design review panel conclusions. And to the right are revisions demonstrating here some of the work that we've done in order to design windows for some of the blank walls, which previously were only masonry. And these windows have been added with an attempt to make a clear distinction between what's historic and what's new, while also complementing to the rhythm that exists with the existing spandrel panels and brick piers. So we'll move on to the next slide. There's an attempt here to retain the porous stretch of around 40 meters of a freestanding masonry wall, supported with steel frame and moment connections. On the left-hand side are, again, the previous design review panel results and our modifications. A lot of this considers some technical adjustments, and some instructions were given to reduce the diagonal framing and to consider moment frames, which have been shown here. We'll move on to the next slide. Okay, so I wanted to leave it on this rendering, which I think is a considerable culmination of some of the work that we've all contributed to since 2014. And generally, the crosstown proposal is, I think, a balance between these various planning and heritage objectives, with the strategy that aims to conserve the existing character while also allowing the site to evolve into the 21st century. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Nicholas. Are there questions? Just give me 1 second until they get it back to the screen where I can see you all.
Yes.
Hold on just 1 sec, because I can't see you yet. Okay, Jeff?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you can.
Yes, the question of the deputant, Nicholas, that last image, was that rendering to represent the view from Eglinton as it will be, or is it something different? I mean, the point here is that the iconic view is as you're driving, west or east on Eglinton, you view up the hillside, and you see the red, you see the form of the buildings that fit the landscape in such a wonderful way, and we want to see what the replacement view will look like.
Well, this is as close to the height of a human in terms of the renderings that we've produced. Now, you're referencing we've put considerable work into maintaining the view from the east to face from Eglinton, looking towards the buildings. So this is probably the closest to that scale.
You want to pull that back up so people can see it?
Yasmina, you can take the screen now if you wish.
Yeah, sorry, Yasmina didn't know she'd go back to the presentation. She got involved in doing something else, so she'll be back with us, or we could move on with discussion, and the picture will come back when she.
Okay. My other question is about the naming of the project. We've been familiar with the name Winford Green.
Mm-hmm.
Has it changed?
Yes, it has. It is now referred to as Crosstown.
I would add that the panel and the Kund has been extremely interested in this project, and there really hasn't been much opportunity for the public to be involved as these discussions have gone along. And there has been great concern about what happened at North York Council. That obviously that's water under the bridge at this point. But we're pleased to see this being brought forward to some termination at last.
Great. Thank you. Likewise.
Are there other questions, Alex?
Yes, my question has to do with the south-facing elevation that I saw in one of the renderings, which only arrived in the last day or two, but I don't think you showed it this time. It shows what appears to be a balcony going across at maybe the second floor level or third floor level of the residential redevelopment. Is that correct? It didn't show up very clearly, and I thought, it doesn't look that great. I was concerned about the incorporation of the balconies for access from the apartments, but is there anything that you have that shows closer up in more detail what the apartment facade is going to look like?
That would be on the 12th slide of the presentation. We don't have visual references right now, but if I can do my best to explain, we were given some instruction from city staff to ensure that the spandrel panels be repurposed in such a way that they act as balcony guards. So this stitches together the fabric in its entirety. So the visual rhythm that is sustained by the retained heritage fabric is continued with the new balconies that are proposed.
Is there also a balcony which extends to the south from the wall? That's what I thought I saw, but it wasn't clear.
Maybe if we go, yes, right here. Is this doing justice to your question?
So that, where you see the little umbrellas, that is in fact a new balcony extending outwards from the building, isn't it? I wasn't sure what it was.
You're looking in plan. I'm speaking about the elevation here, which is going.
I don't see it in the elevation very clearly, if at all. That's what was confusing me.
No, the balcony is contained within the original face of the building.
Oh, So there's nothing built out to the south.
There's no constructed fabric outside of that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, once again, I can't see you because the presentation is there, but can somebody just tell me if the...
Just a moment, Sandra. There's a slight lag sometimes before the presentation comes down.
Okay.
Just one moment.
I just want to make sure before Yasmina takes it down, Jeff did want to see something relative to another question. And we waited pending Yasmina being able to get back to us.
Okay. Yes, you're right, Mary.
Just want to make sure all the board are done with the presentation. I appreciate, Sandra, you can't see, but it's easier just to keep it up.
Right. Okay. Jeff?
I believe Yasmina did bring up the perspective view from the south. I mean, it's completely dominated by 39-story towers, you know, and the use of the existing buildings as a podium is very much muted. But that's where we are. That's where we are.
I did.
Sorry, Nicholas.
If I may, if we're done with the presentation, could we take this down now? Madam Chair?
Does anyone else have a question with the presentation? Just say it if you do, because I can't see you. I think we're good. Ellen, take it down.
You can flip from the presentation by the greater than and less than button at the top right-hand corner of your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you say something?
No worry, continue.
Okay. So does anyone else have a question? Because if you don't, I do. Okay, my turn. Nicholas, this is the first time I've seen the whole plan, and what I'm wondering is, given that era and how carefully the interiors of these buildings, right down to the furnishings, were designed, as well as the exteriors, are you retaining any of the lobby elements of the original building to be incorporated into at least the entrance of one of the towers?
That's a good question, and the intention currently is not to retain any of the interiors. First of all, there's been many unsympathetic alterations since the original construction, and also to accommodate the new building fabric, some of these were deemed not representative of the original 1967 construction.
Okay, I understand. It's just in the overall staff report, there's one image of the lobby that's just so elegant, so my taste. I was just kind of hoping that it would be there, but that's life. Okay, any other questions to Nicholas? Okay, thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, everyone.
And now, any questions of staff?
I have a question.
Yes, Paul.
I was very intrigued by a submission on this item from Anne-Marie E. Branch, and talking about the frameworks for identifying 20th century architecture. And the deputant says that ICOMOS, ICOMOS, has determined that the heritage of 20th century architecture is being lost via demolition and insensitive adaptation reuse. and they have a new framework, and I wonder when that framework might be considered as to apply in our city.
Well, we haven't had a chance to really go over the letter, which I found very interesting. We're certainly engaged with a number of the themes emerging out of the work of the International ICOMOS. Periodically they come out with bulletins and directions on things. I think for the moment we are reviewing properties within the provincial criteria and within a broader understanding of the work of the individual architects involved. I don't know, Tamara, if you have anything to add about this, but we are certainly evolving our practice always. And certainly as we move into the more active heritage survey work, there are certain thematic concerns that we'll actually have an opportunity to consider. Right now, we are pretty much left with, taking a look at a building on a site, trying to understand it in its architectural period and within the work of the architect. But in terms of applying a uniform frame to a number of buildings at the same time to understand their interrelationships, we are not in a position where we can do that. But for the Heritage Survey, we might be, so it's a good thing to consider. We're not actively using that lens right now. Tamara, do you have anything to add?
I was just going to add that the work around the Don Mills crossing actually looked at a collection of the mid-century commercial buildings, sort of more broadly, rather than just site-specific. So this one was a little separate because it actually predated the survey part. That's all I was going to add.
I guess Barbara and then Jeff.
Can you hear me? Okay. Just back to the letter that Paul was talking about. I just want to know if staff had any concern about the part that refers to it as being the 2016 report, and whether or not they have any concerns using the 2016 report as a designation report when there are some critiques in here on terminology that's been used for the architecture.
To answer that?
I'm not sure if Tamara and I can answer that, but we certainly did prepare. What staff had hoped to do was to designate the building prior to the application being fully negotiated. So we did prepare that report back in 2016. We review our material, and it was reviewed back in March. And I think the question is whether or not the ICOMOS work post 2016 has influenced our thinking. It hasn't in terms of this particular report, and we didn't feel that there was anything we needed to update. So I don't know if that's a comprehensive enough answer, but that's essentially, we stand by the 2016 report. We haven't adopted any new international lens. We're still using our own provincial criteria. And so there's nothing new for us to say. But I did read the letter with interest, and certainly, everything that is applying a kind of an international approach to things is always worth looking at.
Okay, so basically you're confident with this report, and you don't feel that with this letter there needs any revision, that it's fine going ahead with a designation?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a speakers list now of Jeff, then Robert, then Julia. Jeff.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Paul for raising the letter by Anne-Marie Branch, and give some background there that Anne-Marie is like the American President Biden. She's a presumptive member of the panel. She attends every meeting, very religious about it. but she's not right now a member. She cannot be because you haven't opened the competition for this term of council. Having said that, she submitted her proposal regarding ICOMOS. She reads very widely. She's aware of what's going on. She submitted information to I guess it's Parks Canada, which does the Canadian national stuff on heritage, and is working with them to try and get it at that level. But she is involved locally, and I'm glad that she was able to make those comments. Thank you.
Robert?
Yes. Just to pick up on the point that you made, Sandra, about the interiors. I'm looking on my iPad at the package and seeing that interior, the north entry lobby, I think was the one that you were referring to.
Yes.
It does seem to me you might want to add an addendum to the motion that in some way one of these lobbies, and I don't know whether this is typical or how many of them there were, but it would seem to me a very good idea either to keep or to recreate as closely as possible one of these interiors as part of the approvals.
1 second, Barbara. What I would recreate is one of those words, but it would certainly be nice, I would think, to be inspired by a photo like that, to take the space and create the flavor of it, if not an exact replica.
Well, retention would be preferable, and it may be that the interiors have been screwed around with, but to restore them back to or one of them at least, so that there's some homage to the qualities of that period in the interior of the building.
Okay, thank you. So the next person is Julia, then Barbara.
Everybody. So my question is if staff could speak to the fact that as they've developed the designation, they've commented that the building had an organic approach to its surroundings, which is, I think, really important. And in the renderings that we got, the lawns and the landscaping are still preserved, but then we have these giant stories. So could staff comment to how they balance, like how is this is a gross juxtaposition of the organic surroundings and these tall towers. How do we come to this conclusion then? How is this organic, or how do we reconcile that with the comment in our designation about sort of this blending of this building in its surroundings?
I'm absolutely happy to answer the question, but I thought we were in speakers. We moved out of questions of staff.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was my mistake then.
Correct. So that's absolutely correct. And so the question is...
Then I'll just phrase it as a comment that this is just, it's a very bizarre juxtaposition of these giant towers in an otherwise very low level surrounding. I recognize we have to enter 2020. We need to accommodate housing, but it's a design that very much doesn't keep with this original comment.
Could we go back to questions of staff?
Do people wish to do that?
No, it's okay. I don't need it answered. It's better as a comment.
Sure. Okay. So the next person is...
Can I make a comment, Sandra?
I'm sorry? Ellen?
Make a comment.
I'm sorry, who is it?
Kim Story.
Oh, Kim, sorry. Okay.
I just wanted to say, in response to what Julia is saying, I actually find it kind of refreshing. I don't really mind how these towers have been put on this because it allows them to sort of be more complementary so that the organic and the low level and quality of the original building is still allowed to be fairly expressive. And then the towers are quite separate, which I actually like. And when you look back at the one that we saw earlier, 572 Street, where the new building will slavishly follow the outline of the original one with a tiny setback. I find that really so bulky and distracting from the original. Whereas I find that these, especially the elevation that looks head on to the towers, this is actually, I kind of admire it because it has allowed the original IBM building to kind of maintain that. And having said that, I'd also throw in my support for the interior lobby. I think that's really important to add. Anyways, just want to say that.
Okay, is Barbara's turn next?
Okay, you can hear me? I just want to refer back to what Bob was talking about the interior and you, Sandra, and that I did note that the interior is not a heritage attribute of the building. Besides that, I don't see how you can actually say that you want an interior recreated. However, I do think that visually, and looking at that photo, it would be great if it was. But it isn't actually a heritage attribute for this designation notice.
You're correct. Unfortunately. Are there any other comments? Frank. Unmute, Frank.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. A few comments about the preservation of the existing building. It's, in my opinion, it's a more glorified version of facadism. The interiors have been pretty well ignored, and it is the footprint of the building that's allowed, being so big, that's allowed it to be retained. The three towers are a foreign element. In no way, shape, or form do they fit into the confines of what's there. But that's not our mandate. Our mandate is to look at preserving the existing building. I think that it's insulting personally to suggest that, if you retain the facade, which is pretty well what they're doing, you've done your job to retain the architecture. Architecture isn't something that is expressed as a facade. When we design buildings as a whole, and this was a fine example of modern architecture that should have been preserved in its entirety. And I think what's happening here is because there's about $50 million in profit that's going to be made. So let's call it what it is. The notion that the materials of the new the development have somehow been used to emulate what's there already is also something I can't see. The masonry facades, I don't see them being emulated in any way, shape, or form by the white blank walls that are the facades that are being used. And I looked at the stacked townhouse elements. I've seen them at Eglinton and Martin Grove. I mean, it's just nothing. There's nothing spectacular here. So when I look at this, I think that the heritage elements are simply being tolerated, for lack of a better word. Those are my comments on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Frank. Are there any other comments? Robert?
The question of back to the interiors, whether or not they're considered part of the attributes, I think it wouldn't be unreasonable for us to suggest, request, somehow urge the proponent to give consideration for the restoration of a substantial part of the interior.
Okay, I just have a question of Ellen. I guess we could put that in as an additional recommendation or another motion on top of the recommendations. How would we do that if we were to do that?
Well, I'll need some language if someone can email that to me. And I'm sorry, it was a little unclear, the audio. I wasn't able to catch it. So if you'll have to hold the item down until we get a bit sorted out.
Okay. So for that, so Robert, could you just send some wording, please? Right now to teycc@toronto.ca.
I thought it was your motion.
Oh, I thought you had taken it. Okay. Okay, then, Ellen, let me just quickly, but should it, okay, here's, I guess, my question before I write anything. Would we be moving to recommend, moving the staff recommendations with this as an addition? Or are there questions about the other staff, of the current staff recommendations before we do that? I can put some wording together just about the interiors, but I'm just wondering if we have anything else so that we can do it all in one fell swoop, so to speak. Julia, you just turned red. There, you're back. You want to speak, Julia? Oh, no. Okay. Jeff?
Is this the part of the time to speak with comments? I thought we were still in questions of.
We've been out of questions with staff.
No, I'm now in comments from members of the board.
So I may clarify for the viewers or anyone, you were on speakers.
Okay.
And has the committee decided to go back to questions of staff?
No, we've decided not to.
Okay, so then if you want to stand down the item just for a few minutes until someone lets me know what it is they're moving, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on the interiors. Okay.
Are we not still, we're still on comments from members?
Yes, we are, but here's what's happening, Jeff. It's confusing because this is why it's difficult, Robert, for me to write, because I'm chairing, but we're trying to simultaneously, because of the delay, because everything has to be emailed to Ellen as opposed to you writing it on a piece of paper and walking over to Ellen, which is what we would normally do. I'm just trying to figure out how much, in addition to the interior, we may be questioning and via comments about any of the recommendations, because that's what we tend to do. That makes sense? Yes, no?
Sandra?
Yeah, sorry.
Sandra, this is Mary, Sandra. I know what you're looking for, so I will assist you in preparing something that might fit the bill, and then you can massage it as needed. If you wish to continue on with the speakers.
Okay, so you'll draft something and email me and Ellen, or email me, or share it on the screen. How does this work?
Email you, I'll copy Ellen. It's your motion, but I'll just assist at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mary. So now Barbara wants to speak?
Yes. Does anybody know what still exists inside this building in terms of interior?
Good question, Barbara.
Before we move on,
going back to staff.
Yeah, well, there was a comment by the speaker that most of the interiors have been altered. Of course, you can recreate and put them back to what they were, but in terms of the actual construction of what's going on, he said that was difficult for the interiors. I have no idea of what is left in there in the interior, what you could save, or in fact, where in that building you would want to actually recreate anything.
Good point.
Good morning, it's Tamara at Cartwright. Just to answer that, as we were not changing the heritage attributes, we did not make a subsequent site visit in the last of the interiors. I think our information was based on quite some time ago. I would suggest that it would actually have to be Joe Muller or the applicant to be able to explain what is actually in the existing condition on the interior at this time. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have sort of slid back into queries of staff. So Ellen, is that okay? Just because we'd like to be able to ask Joe Muller what still exists in the interior.
Although it is out of order of procedure, if this is what the committee would like to do at this particular time, then carry on.
Okay. Joe, can you just tell us what's still left?
Hi, Sandra. And I would actually have to defer to the proponent as we haven't conducted a site visit.
Okay.
So we were going on the basis of the information that was at hand. The property has been closed, so we haven't been on site.
Right. So I think what the best we can do, I think, as far as interior goes, say if at all feasible, would be suggested. That might be nice. We can't get any
Sandra, it's Mary again.
Oh, wait a second.
It's Mary again. I am working on something for you. So
that's not you calling me. No. Okay. Okay, I think we're just going to have, Jeff, and you have a comment, otherwise we're just going to have to wait a minute.
Well, I have comments from the panel. Is that where we're at right now? We submitted a letter, a 4-page letter.
Right. So would you like to raise some of those points now?
I would.
Okay.
Okay, so firstly, we're pleased that listing and designation of this property is being brought forward at last. As you know, 1150 is one of the two landmark modernist properties which were associated with IBM and later Celestica in the Northwest Quadrant at Don Mills and Eglinton. Both were nominated by the North York panel in 2011 and endorsed by the Toronto Preservation Board at that time. However, it was not until 2016 that assessment reports came forward for approval for 1150 for listing and designation, and 844 for designation as it was already listed. Both were recommended by the Preservation Board at that time, but as we've said, North York Council referred the reports back to staff. This had the effect of diverting the properties from their intended path and denying the legal advantage of having designation in place as proposals came forward. Secondly, there does seem to be an improvement in the proposed amount of heritage retention compared with earlier proposals. However, the panel continues to have concerns about whether the plan maintains the fundamental integrity of the design. The three towers radically poke through the existing low-rise building. The original design scheme was based on the symbiotic relationship between the form of the existing building with its spread-eagled layout and its site on a ravine, a bluff, above the Don River and above Eglinton Avenue. We fear that the insertion of out-of-scale blocks will utterly distort and diminish the vista northwards from Eglinton. Thirdly, and as a logical extension of the second point, there needs to be increased attention to the landscape architecture of the property in its larger context. The flanking slopes above the West Don and above Eglinton Avenue comprise part of the Eglinton Cultural Heritage Landscape Corridor that spans from the west slope of the West Don across to the east slope of the East Don, branches of the Don River Valley. And fourthly, while there is reference to heritage interpretation and the required submission of an interpretation plan, the report does not mention any specific details to the detriment of the heritage value. We note that the major importance of the site in the story of Canadian business technology, and IBM in particular, is really important, and a commemorative component should be included. That's missing right now. And finally, we note that 1150 and 844 Don Mills Road are important, and they're very important. But they're only part of a cluster of modernist properties in the Don Mills area. And that was part of this massive Don Mills Crossing Cultural Heritage Assessment, the CHRA, which was part of the Don Mills Crossing Planning Report, which recommends the listing of several properties. There were 7 properties that were deferred by North York Council back in November 2019, 6 months ago, and remain to be brought back for decision. So our recommendations are 4 of them. Firstly, that the report be adopted and recommended to Council, as recommended by staff. Secondly, that City Council request staff to report back on a cultural heritage landscape designation for the Eglinton corridor between the east and west branches of the Don River. Thirdly, that recommendation 6A6 be amended to require the interpretive plan to include a strong commemorative component. And fourthly, that City Council request staff to report back as soon as possible on the outstanding properties that were deferred in the Don Mills Crossing CHRA study. And we have submitted the detailed wording of our recommendations, which I will move, or Alex will move as a motion at this meeting.
Okay, so first a comment from Barbara, then Alex.
Jeff, in the recommendations, the first one that you have, excuse me, includes listing intention to designate and the heritage easement agreement, but it in fact does not recommend the alterations. Is that missing or intentionally missing?
You just muted yourself, Jeff.
Yes, that's missing by my mistake.
So it should be in there. So you're accepting the alterations as well. The staff, the complete staff motion.
We're in that position, yes.
Okay, so that's the complete staff motion. Thank you. And I would say that I would support the strong commemorative component of your recommendations.
Alex?
Yes, I wanted to talk about the commemorative component. That was sort of my idea that should be definitely beefed up. I think it's a great opportunity for sort of a landmark interpretive approach. Maybe not quite like the Don Valley Brickworks, but considering that this building not only has the IBM component, and at that time when this building was built, IBM was 70% of the Canadian computer market. It also provides an excellent example of some of the finest work, I think, of John B. Parkin. It also provides, because of its location, a sort of a interesting view of how Don Mills got shaped by railway lines and the Don Valley. And I noticed somewhere in this report there was a mention that some of the bricks might be reused in a pavement, but I'd like to suggest that there could be some really fascinating creative artwork, sculptures. You could, for example, take bricks and make it into a punch card and have holes, leave bricks out where there'd be holes in the punch card. There's certainly going to be a lot of glass and metal salvaged from parts of the building. Maybe you could design a transistor, a modern art. And I'm not sure, I mean, we can't recommend, I suppose, what art installations, but I think it would be great. And there seems to be this area with the supported wall. I don't know whether that could become an area where you could have good interpretive panels, where you could show what the interior looked like, John B. Parkin, history of computing and IBM's role in it, history of Don Mills, but I would really like to see a strong interpretive component. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. So I mean, we can't tell people what to do, but what I am hearing is let's beef up that item 6 on page 3 of the report, 6A.6. Be it one way or another, that's not for us to say, but what we do all agree on is that's where, where's the beef? Are there any other comments? And Mary, how are you doing?
Sandra, I sent you something.
I haven't got it yet.
I worked in, I decided to put it, since it's a reconstruction of an area, I've chosen to nest it within the interpretation plan recommendation as an aspect of interpretation. And, but that may not be described comprehensively enough given Jeff's motion. So there might need to be a smooshing together of the two. I can also confirm Mary Beth's been looking for some of her site visit photos from when we were out there originally. And so far, the interiors that I'm seeing of the lobby are very 1970s. I know there are a number of interior spaces, so that's by no means a survey of them. But from what I can tell, they are radically altered, at least in some areas that I can see, just for your information.
Radically altered in ways that could not be easily recovered?
Well, if you pardon me for the irregularity of having this conversation with you.
I know. It's just,
I apologize to Ellen, our clerks who are trying to run a meeting in a formal way.
Shoot me, Ellen.
I think if we consider it an act of commemoration or interpretation, then to look to the original photographs and to bring back a sense of the interior lobby in some way is something that could be explored. And I think as an exploration, it's an interesting one. There may be spaces that have more integrity. So you can always bring something back, but that's why I would put it here rather than a restoration, because it would be brand new.
Okay, so let me just read to all of you what Mary has said, because I think what it does is it expresses our intent and hope without being giving orders, being prescriptive. So it would say, instead of 6 as it's currently written, it would say provide an interpretation plan for the subject project to the satisfaction of the senior manager heritage planning, including, but not limited to, commemoration of the original Parkland design, the history of IBM within Don Mills, and to also include exploration of restoring interior lobby spaces back to their original design for interpretive purposes. Want me to read that again? Or read it more slowly?
Well, Ellen could maybe, and then there's, I left off the rest of the recommendations. So Ellen, it should still read, and thereafter shall implement such plan.
I have just one question. Should it say subject property and not subject project?
No, subject property.
Yeah, but it says project, so I'll change that. Okay.
Oh, yes. No, I wasn't intending to change that. But now, Sandra, you want to reconcile that with Jeff's motion.
Okay, so now here's what I am trying to do is get back to my letters. How do I get to my desktop so that I can see this? I hate this not having stuff all printed out. How do I do this? Where do I minimize? Let me just hit escape. Aha. Okay. Got it. So maybe. Jeff, can you hear me?
We can't hear you.
Oh, damn.
Yes, I can hear you.
I just need to know, am I on? Yes. I just need to know, is it, of the 3 attachments, is it 1, 2, or 3?
So, Chair, I think you need to pause. We cannot hear you.
Yes. Oh,
I can
We
hear
can hear you.
I'm not muted.
That's right. We can hear you.
Oh, can you hear me?
If I may, Sandra, I have the motion ready. Did you want it displayed at this time or not?
I would love it displayed. That would make my life so much easier. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this is what I just read to you with the correction that Ellen made. The correction is changing the word project for the subject project to subject property. So this is what I read, but then there is also larger recommendation that Jeff made. And Jeff, if I understand correctly, excuse me, I understand correctly that some of your motion, which I don't have in front of me, agrees with the staff recommendations, but then there are modifications. And this is what I'm trying to get on a screen as well, so we can see.
Oh, Sandra, we
are.
Sorry, we weren't sure if Jeff was moving the motion. Jeff, would you like us to display it such as we've prepared it?
Absolutely.
Yes, okay, so then we can do that. So then it gets to, so number 1 is what we were just discussing, and then go to number 2.
Scroll up, please.
You can't scroll.
There's no need to scroll. That's the motion.
No, but I can't read the bottom of it. So if you could scroll up on the screen.
You just move it up. It's the whole screen. Are you saying number 2, City Council requests the Senior Manager, Heritage Planning, Urban Design, City Planning to report back on the outstanding properties assessed in the Don Mills Crossing CHRA study?
Yeah, I can't read that part of it.
Oh.
Because it's on the bottom of the screen. It's not showing up on the screen. That's why I'm asking you to scroll it in some way or move it. I can't move it.
Can't do that. Ellen, I can see the whole thing. That's why I was able to read it to you. Can you minimize it a bit, Robert, on the left-hand side? Would that make it possible to see the whole thing? See the zoom button in and out on the left of your screen?
I do.
And if you hit the little the bottom one where it's the little line to minimize it.
Okay, got it. Yep.
Have you got it now?
Yep.
Okay.
I've got a point of order question.
Who is speaking? Matthew?
Matthew.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering if 2.2 of the motion would be in order, as it's asking about other properties in the Don Mills CHRA study. Is that, pertinent on this item?
Ellen? The question is being asked because that's not what's being discussed in this particular agenda item, but I can see why one would be asking for it. Ellen?
Just a moment, please, Sandra.
Okay.
Sandra? I think it's up to the committee. If the committee is of the mind that the Don Mills Crossing area pertains as well to this general area, then I think that the motion should be fine.
Okay, because it does. I mean, this is all part of it. So what I think what the recommendation is requesting is simply, given the issues we're facing at this particular moment, why not get a report back to preempt this being a problem every single time? Is that correct, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, Barbara?
Yes, I have a question. The motion that's before us, which is from the report that Jeff read, how does that marry into, no pun intended, how does that mix in with Mary's amendment? Because we're once again talking about the commemorative component, but this isn't the wording that was provided that Mary had previously. We're looking at the same item.
6.8.6 would have to, okay, this is the procedural thing, Ellen, and I'm getting dizzy. So what we would be doing is amending 6.A6 first.
That's right.
Then we would recommend approval of the rest of the recommendations.
Sandra, if I may, this motion that's Jeff's motion, it would amend 6A6, and then it would add 2 new recommendations as new. They would be additional. And then you would just do a motion, you would do a motion to adopt the item as amended, which would bring in all of your other recommendations to be adopted. Okay? I don't know.
Okay, so we can do it in all one fell swoop?
You can, except I don't know, if you can just provide some direction as to the 6A6, both you and Jeff are amending it, so I'm not sure, and which is perfectly fine, you can both move your motions, but I didn't know if you wanted to do anything about that.
Okay, but before we do that, Barbara's waving her hand, and she's one of the only people I can see at the moment. Okay.
My question is, in fact, with what we're calling Jeff's motion, do we in fact need part 1 of that if we already have what Mary provided, which I feel is actually stronger because it's spelling out exactly what we want?
Well, of course, I mean, then that's up to Jeff if he wants to remove that portion of his motion, but he's also entitled, of course, to move that.
I'm willing to remove it, the 6.8.6. I agree that there's more specificity in Mary's motion.
Okay, so then 2.1, new recommendation to be added. Number 1 would be replaced by, would go away, and 6.8.6 would
Oh, no, sorry, Sandra. If, so Jeff, did I understand that you want us to take out your amendment to 6.6 and in order that the other one can be adopted?
Yes. I do have a question about Mary's motion.
So just
in terms of the.
Okay, one thing at a time, Jeff. So let's get the first thing out of the way.
What we could do then is we can amend your motion, Jeff, to remove the amendment to 6A6 rather, and then leave it as 2 additional new recommendations. And then, of course, then Sandra has her motion, which covers off 6.A6.
Yes.
That what the members would like us to do?
Okay, I can't see all the members, but does anyone object to that? That's the easiest way to do it.
Just taking the motion down now.
Thank you. Okay, so now I can see everyone. Hello, everyone again.
You might want to ask, Alex was the one who came up with the commemorative issue. Maybe check with him.
Alex, are you happy? Unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm happy with the Mary's version of the commemorative, and just leave Jeff to do the crossing and the cultural heritage landscape.
Good. Okay. Barbara.
Okay, so just to be clear, we would be adopting, if we do, the recommendation that Mary has put forward, the wording. That would be adopted, and then we would adopt the 2 additional town, etc. And so there'd be 2 separate motions to the original one, which is adopting the staff report.
Is that correct, Ellen?
That's right. So shall I, just let me know when you'd like me to amend those motions.
Okay, thank you.
You can amend them right now.
I have a question about the second part about the interior restoration issue.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, given the concerns, well, the fact that the alterations will result in facades rather than whole buildings, whole rooms, how feasible it is to discuss interiors given that situation from an architectural perspective.
Barbara?
Yes, actually, I looked at that myself, and I wondered, in fact, if the interior is properly placed under the way it was placed in interpretation. With our original intent was to recreate an interior, and maybe, in fact, as you said, that may not be doable. That what we're doing is looking at the commemorative in terms of looking at the interior, not recreating it. I don't know if that's a discussion we want to have. But the way the motion is worded, it was a little strange that you're going to recreate this interior and then interpret it. I was thinking more of you would have an interior that would be usable by the building occupants.
That's what that's what I originally thought, but in a way that evokes, or I'm not sure what the correct verb is, former interior, that gives some sense of what that was like, because it was an architectural style that planned down to every last detail, inside and out.
I think what you have to do is make it a separate motion. Take it out of the interpretation motion. It's really, and given that it's not an aspect of the criteria, of the heritage criteria, it's pretty flimsy. But it's a matter of requesting that it be considered, and that should be a separate motion.
Barbara?
I think we have to be clear from the board if, in fact, what we were looking at is the actual physical recreation of a space, or if we are satisfied with maybe separate commemoration of the interior within the interior of the building, be it panels or whatever, and doing homage to the interior that way. But the board needs to be clear. I think we're a little going around here.
Can I see? I'm sorry, Ellen. Can I see the motion again? Can we see it again, please?
Your motion or Jeff's?
My motion.
Yes, and it's Marion, as unusual as this is for me to speak like this in this way, the intention, my advice to Sandra on her motion is really to provide a wide latitude of things to explore. Because I don't have a documentation of all of the lobby spaces, there may actually be elements that are still there that might be worth keeping. And so the intention is to work through a couple of options. And if it were to turn out that there was absolutely no ability to properly do something with the interior, then we would fall back.
Yeah,
we would fall back on a commemoration that was different.
Yeah, because Barbara, that's what it says, and to also include exploration of restoring interior lobbies, not requiring it or requesting it. Just think about it as one of the things you may do as part of your interpretation plan.
Okay, that would be fine, but maybe perhaps in the commemoration, you've included the original park and design. You may actually want to include the words commemoration of the interior. Then you can also have the exploration of the interior lobby spaces.
So it would be another way, option of.
So you're assured that commemoration of the interior is there, but you're also going to explore the options of looking at restoring the interior lobby space.
I see what
Mary has written it.
The way
commemoration of the park and design would include interior and exterior. But, you know, if you want to make it clearer, you could put that in a bracket, both interior and exterior spaces.
I think I would put it in, I see what you're going. You've left it wide open, which is, that's typical to leave everything wide open. It might be clearer, though, if you did put it in brackets, exterior and interior, and then you go to the exploration part.
Sure, yeah. Sandra, if Sandra wishes.
So then it would say commemoration of the original park and design, in parentheses, interior and exterior. The history of IBM within Don Mills. Where did it go?
We're just adding the words to see if you're happy with it. One moment.
Okay. There's something redundant in my little brain there. I'm thinking that, okay, so it would say, but not limited to commemoration of the original park and design, both interior and exterior, the history of IBM within Don Mills, and to also include exploration, okay, of restoring interior lobby spaces. So that's more than it's still commemorative, but in a more.
It's more than interpretation. It should be a separate motion.
Yeah. A separate motion or a separate item?
Separate motion. Seven. Whatever, no.
Barbara?
We don't make a distinction, just to be clear. Our interpretation plans are commemorative.
I just wanted to know, now Bob is the original person to bring this up about the interiors. I just want to know if this satisfies him. I would be happy with this.
Robert, are you somewhere and are you happy to find you? There you are. No, that's not you. Where did Robert go? Here. Robert, are you there? See he's muted and his initials. Not hearing from him.
Yeah, you're hearing from me now.
Yay. Hi, Robert. Are you happy?
Hi. Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy.
Okay, Robert's happy. Oh, thank goodness. Procedures be damned. Had a fulsome discussion in the wrong place yet again. Okay, so then we're good. And I don't think it has to be a separate motion.
Okay, you should vote on each motion separately and then adopt the item as amended as a motion.
Okay. Okay, so this is what we can't do. We can't, Paul?
Just before we vote, I would like to compliment the panel on a really great work on putting this together, and actually everybody on the call to get the interpretation. I mean, talk about the lobbies. If I was thinking about the end, it would be a false floor because I operated all the 360 IBM series from all through the thing. It's a great opportunity for a technological commemoration, and I mean, building was the sole manufacturing source of electric typewriters. So there's really a great story here, and I hope it'll be approached creatively. And congratulations to everybody.
Okay, so Alex, you're not trying to speak. That was just a thank you, correct?
Well, that was my contribution on this.
I know, but yes. And I think Alex is trying to thank you as acting panel chair. Okay, so let's vote. So can we?
So if I may, please, Sandra, so we'll put the motion up briefly. Just give us a second to take it down so that when you take the vote, you can see the hands.
Sure.
Okay?
Okay. So I'm putting forward this motion, and now I need to know who is in favor. Any opposed? Okay, so that one is carried. Now we have the next motion. So can you post that again, Ellen? We have two more motions. So we can do them both at once, Ellen?
Yes, this is one motion. You can just vote on both parts of it at the same time.
Okay. So, Jeff, do you want to move this?
Yes.
We accept these recommendations. And then all in favor, hands up. Just waiting for the screen to come back. Any opposed? No? Okay, now the third thing we're doing is moving the original staff recommendations with amendments, right? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Think we did it, gang. It's carried. Thank you. Okay, so I think we can move on to item 15.8. And that is the inclusion on the City of Toronto's Heritage Register, intention to designate under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Alterations to a heritage property and authority to enter into a heritage easement agreement at 292 Main Street. And Ellen, at 12:30, because we're at 12:13 right now, do we have to pause to extend?
Yes, at any time right now, you could move a motion to extend the meeting past the lunch recess to complete the business.
Yes, okay. On the safe assumption that we will be, I'm trying to get this large again there, moving past 12:30. Acrobat readers. Just a second, I have some weird on my. Who has the message? I'm sorry, Ellen, before I do that, there's a message right in my screen, right in the middle of the presentation, saying that.
It's not to do with us. Just continue.
Okay, I'm trying. There, well, close. Okay, never mind. So now, but before we look at this, can we please have all the panelists back, please, Ellen, so that we can vote on extending past the lunch hour? just went away. Ellen, I need to see the whole panel so that I...
Just a moment, please, Sandra.
There we go. Okay, thank you. Here we go. Okay. Can I have a motion to extend the meeting past the lunch hour? Julia. Okay, all in favor? Okay, we're extending past the lunch hour. Back to the presentation, please.
Just give Yasmina a second to share her screen.
Okay, okay, super.
Can turn off the video.
Yasmina, do you have sharing rights yet?
Just a minute.
Hi, just give me a minute. I have having a computer, but I'm getting the presentations up.
I've got it, Kathy. Sounds off, videos off. The video and the sound. So, yeah.
This is running so seamlessly. I have a motion to have a drink. So, oh, here we go. Okay. Speaking to this.
Okay, hi there. Once again, it's Liz McFarland.
Hi, Liz. Go ahead.
Okay, Yasmina, could you kindly advance slide? That's the location map, the City of Toronto's property data map. Could you, yeah, one more. That's perfect. Thank you. So the subject property at 292 Main Street is located on the west side of the street between Danforth Avenue and Stevenson Avenue and was completed by 1887. The property was formally nominated to Heritage Planning by a member of the community for heritage evaluation in 2018. And following research and evaluation according to Regulation 906, it has been determined that the property at 292 Main Street has design, associative, and contextual value. Slide, please. The property is a rare example of an Ontario cottage-style house form building in this part of East Toronto. Style is evident in the form and organization of the openings on the building's south elevation, which was once the principal elevation. At a later date, the orientation of the principal elevation shifted to the east, as evidenced today, to address adjacent buildings constructed to front onto Main Street and located in very close proximity to 292 Main around the first 2 decades of the 20th century. So essentially, the building on the top there is not actually 292 Main. It's a typical example of an Ontario cottage style, but it's also representative of what we found on the south elevation of 292. It's very difficult to actually see. You can see in the photo in the bottom the lancet-shaped dormer window. You're looking upward in that photo, but it's very difficult to get in there, as the adjacent building that was built around 1915 is maybe 2 feet, if even, away. So it's it's tricky to get photos in there at the moment. But let's see, slide please, Yasmina. So the property at 292 Main is historically associated with one of East Toronto's most significant residents, Donald George Stevenson. He was a local lumber merchant, a landowner, and a politician. Stevenson owned and is attributed to building 292 Main Street, where he also likely resided, or completing his final residence at 2190 Gerrard Street, which is included on the city's Heritage Register. Contextually, the house form building at 292 Main defines, supports, and maintains the historic character of this portion of East Toronto, where a burgeoning population of railway workers settled following the opening of Grand Trunk Railway's freight yard and station in the mid-1880s. The property is valued as a stylistically unique example among a collection of polychromatic brick dwellings located in the Main Street and Stevenson Avenue area that are all attributed to D.G. Stevenson. Recommended that City Council state its intention to designate the property at 292 Main Street under Part 4, Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, in accordance with the Statement of Significance attached as Attachment 5 to the March 9th, 2020 report from the Senior Manager, Heritage Planning, City Planning Division. And I believe now my Heritage Planning colleague, Guy Zimmerman, will give a brief overview of the current development plan that's being proposed for this site. So I'll hand it over to Guy.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Yasmina, could you go to the next slide, please? So the red box identifies the subject property, the cottage form, within the blue box of the approximate development site. The red box in this development ended up relocated to the north, to the top right of that box. So you can see we're at Danforth, across the top, intersection of Main, just slightly south of that. Next slide, please, Yasmina. So here's the existing condition. You can see that the Victorian cottage has been boxed in since the 1920s. A massive tree serves to further camouflage the once prominent house that had buff brick detailing with it. Liz has identified on all four elevations. Note the green on the left hand side, the dormer. You can see the green of the dormer roof that's just kind of jammed into that property to the south. There's like half an inch less than 2 feet between those two. So next slide, please, Yasmina. This gives you an idea of what's happening on the bottom slide. You can see in the undergrowth that the existing house, and as part of the proposal, it gets shifted over to the north in the slide to the right. There's also, I don't know if I went into much detail in the report, but there's a relationship, an adjacency relationship to the building that's actually Danforth address, 2547, the Hakeem building. And you can see how the proposal picks up on some of those lines and tries to relate to that scale. So the house ends up being relocated about 17.6 meters north and slightly east, 0.665 meters east. Last slide, Yasmina. So the challenge then becomes how this is dealt with in the south elevation. You can see in the top of the slide the existing, they're bricked-in openings, but the formal composition is still intact. The south elevation is shown, the proposed is then shown in the bottom, how it's viewed through the lobby, and there's a presentation by the heritage consultant on behalf of the applicant next that has some renderings and goes into a bit more detail of how that south elevation gets interpreted architecturally as part of this new development. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. So we're now going to move on to, I believe there are several presenters, Ellen, and then we'll ask them questions and go back to staff.
That's right.
Okay, so how many speakers do we have and who is the first one?
I believe we have 4 people online now.
Okay.
And Mark Ionia is up first.
Hello, thank you. Yes, this is Mark Ionia from Tribute Communities. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
You have 5 minutes.
Sure, I won't take even close to that. I believe actually all the speakers are from Tribute Communities. I had put quite a few on the list of people to speak just to cover in case it was needed. So some may not even actually speak. So this project is part of a 27-story mixed-use building that we're working on, as outlined by Guy and Liz. The little old house on the property will be relocated to the north, preserving the building in its entirety. I'll hand it over to our heritage consultant, Michael McClelland, who will give our presentation on the on what will be taking place.
Thank you. Michael, are you there? Oh.
You hear me?
Try again. Cool.
Michael, I think you have to unmute yourself. Michael, could you say something? We're trying to unmute you from this end.
Yep.
Heard the yep.
You hear me? No, it goes.
Breaking up.
Sorry, Michael, do you want to try again, please?
Yep.
Perhaps, Madam Speaker, we could go on to the next deputant.
Okay, is there another deputant? I mean, Michael is the heritage consultant. Who are the other deputants?
Is Peter Jakovich there?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair. I, along with Mark Ionia and Stephen DeVoe, are from Tribute Danforth Limited. We represent the ownership. We're excited about the proposal in terms of incorporating the building into our project. We're in support of the report and the application that was presented via Mr. Zimmerman and Liz. We're here to answer any questions you may have. I think there's been a number of months that we spent in terms of analyzing the current the existing condition, looking at it in terms of how it can appropriately be integrated into our proposed development. And we're just excited to be able to move forward, and we are supportive and here to answer any questions that do come up. So there was a presentation, I think, that ERA did put together. And if you'd like to put it up, I might be able to walk us through.
Okay, let's available. Michael available? And I'm echoing again. God.
Me?
Hello?
Can anyone hear?
Michael, I can hear you. Ellen? If Michael's having trouble and Peter knows how to walk us through this, maybe it's best that Peter walk us through it. Peter, is that okay with you?
I am happy to.
Ellen, is Michael okay with that? You're not in the same place, are you?
I don't know, but I'm sure Yasmina can put the presentation up in a moment.
It is up. Is it not? Is that not Michael? Yeah, that's Michael's. It's up right now.
I'm happy to go through it. I know that I'll probably not do it the same justice that Mr. McClellan would be able to, but if we go to the next slide, just in order to just move this along. So when at the onset of the project, when we partnered with the current landowner, it was, through the assessment on site, we brought ERA on board because we had sort of an inclination that this was a historical building. So it was something that we initiated the investigation, and through our consultation with ERA, we felt it was appropriate to sort of advance the dialogue and bring it forward, in terms of the application itself, for the purpose of identifying it as a heritage building and looking at its preservation. Next slide, please. This slide indicates the proposed location of, the future location of the Heritage House. If you see, there is a silhouette immediately south, as Mr. Zimmerman mentioned, that it's approximately 18 meters south of its future resting location. And the intent would be to work through the details in order to accommodate a single move. So it would be done once, and all precautions would be implemented for the preservation of the Heritage House. Next slide, please. The rendering. So this rendering showing the podium indicates the future location of the Heritage Home and its sort of contextual relationship with the architectural articulation that we provided to kind of contextualize that Main Street character in terms of height and associated brickwork. So we picked up a lot of architectural details that exist through the building to our north at 2547, which is identified as the Hakeem property, through the preserved 292 Heritage House, and we've incorporated that into the actual architectural articulation that you see with the brickwork to our podium. Next slide, please. So this brings forward a little bit, it gives you context in terms of a functionality. So it's one thing to preserve. The other aspect that we saw as a strong opportunity was the inclusion of the Heritage House from a utility perspective in the lobby, and where you indicate there's two fenestrations. So one is, they're both intended for pedestrian access. So one is actually situated to the west, and one is central, and it's a reinstatement of the previous entryway. Next slide, please. So this is a profile of that south elevation that Mr. Zimmerman mentioned in terms of the architectural detailing of contextually what was there. When we look at it in terms of its existing conditions, all the openings are currently bricked. What we're proposing is to reinstate those openings, which I think one of the renderings coming up will also illustrate. Next slide, please. So, as mentioned, we are looking at reinstatement of 2 of the windows. And then the central opening for pedestrian movement would be an open caseway. And then to the right, we're proposing a slight modification for the purpose of pedestrian movement into the building from a functionality point of view. Next slide, please. This is an internal rendering of the lobby and the connection that we refined over the period of a few months, if not year, to try and maximize the amount of exposure that south face would have. We worked with our structural engineers to ensure that we were able to maintain the integrity of the proposed development from a weight load perspective, and there's a couple columns that are absolute. A good portion of that south face will be exposed externally. So if you look at the actual component, the easterly south face window is external. The window above the entranceway is also external. However, we felt compelled that we should open it up with glazing to allow for that visual connection to that south face building. It does have functionality and it will be used for the purpose of property management and residents of the building. Next slide, please. And there we go. So there are elevations available in terms of the proposed building, and we are fully committed to undertaking the work necessary to maintain, protect, and restore the home. If you have any questions, we're available for answer. Thank you.
Okay, so my question, anyone else, since everybody who was going to speak was from Tribute, is there anyone else from Tribute who has to speak now, or is this it?
No, we're available for questions and answers at this time.
So at this time, then, board questions of Tribute. Peter Jackson. Then we'll go back to staff. Can I see the board again, please?
Sandra?
Yeah, hold on. I can't see everybody yet. So, wait a second.
Excuse me, Sandra, we do have one more speaker.
No, is there a speaker who is not Tribute?
That's correct.
I'm sorry. Okay, Ellen, please. I'm sorry, one more speaker. Who is it, please?
We're looking for Signe Leask.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Signe.
Hi, yeah, Signe Leask here from Castles. I'm actually the lawyer for Tribute Danforth Limited. So as you've heard, we're in support. I'm only here to assist the board in case there are questions that I can answer.
Okay, so otherwise, then we're good to start asking questions of Tribute, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, board, ask questions of Tribute. Who's first? Jeff?
I just appreciated the description by Peter. It's Peter Jakovic. Just wondering, the lobby is, there's clearly a modern lobby there, a large modern lobby. So what exactly is the function of the heritage building in the context of the building? I had sort of understood it was going to be the lobby, but obviously it's not the lobby. How do you see it working?
I think Thank you for your question through you, Madam Chair. We're envisioning the lobby functioning there's a parcel delivery aspect. So when we look at it in terms of access for the purpose of mail delivery and so forth, I think residents are going to be able to access the heritage home for that component. We're also envisioning a portion of it for property management in terms of maintaining an office component in that building. The entranceway on the east is going to be a functional entrance from the sort of outside of the building, and it'll be a functional ingress egress. So people will be able to access the heritage home from the street and be able to enter the lobby area through the heritage home. The intent would be it will be braced. Its current use right now is an office, and we're going to continue and maintain that utility.
Other questions? Barbara.
Yes, just to clarify, the interior of the Heritage Building is, there will be no second floor. Is that correct? It'll be just a clear height?
That is correct. The intent is to remove that floor, and it'll be full exposure and properly braced.
Okay, and one other question. In terms of your proposed view north, I know there's engineering components to this. It is a little unfortunate that this white beam goes right across in between, and also the window divisions in terms of your view, which is supposedly the important heritage attribute, is the south elevation is obstructed by those. Were there any other schemes that were looked at for this?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, there were. We played around with prospects of integrating it horizontally to have more exposure internally. I think the decision, when we look at sort of cause and effect, the proposal that stands before you is the minimal amount of physical impact to the existing heritage home. So it was sort of a balance where we have that sort of horizontal connection that is above the windowsill. And I think looking at it from the prospect of exposure and having it as open as possible, this, like I said, it was refined over the period of half a year. And ultimately, this is where we felt we find the best balance between utilizing the space, balance between connection, and balance between attaining as much as possible the visible connectivity to that southern face.
Well, just a question. In the division of the windows above the horizontal element, was there ever consideration of having a wider span rather than having those vertical divisions, which are somewhat obscuring your view from the lobby to the heritage elevation?
That is a detail that we can definitely contemplate and possibly, like if there was a way to put up the rendering, we could take a look. It's still a work in progress. We've refined it to this degree, but if we wanted to open it up as a single pane, if you're just trying to eliminate some of those sills, that's something we could definitely explore.
I would like if you would explore that, because I find the view is obscured. I understand it's carrying on from the front, from what I can see, that you're continuing that division, but it's very distracting looking at that elevation if this is the way you're going to view this heritage attribute.
Okay, other questions?
Sorry, the rear elevation I see on the presentation, there's 3 windows that are going to be blocked in, but there is kind of an exterior passageway there that's gated. Is there any way to, you might not be able to keep the windows in place, but is there any way to put some spandrel glass in there so that those windows are or the image of the windows are maintained.
Through you, Madam Chair, that is definitely an opportunity. So it's something that we're happy to look at. I think, once again, it's a balance with security because in conversation with the landowners to the north and the prospect of that laneway, we're trying to do the best we can from a security perspective. There is an intent in terms of some lighting and a lighting plan that we're going to be trying our best to illuminate that north face and then the westerly face as well. So we can contemplate and look at some sort of restoration. If we could attain glazing, that would be great. I think our internal layout might not be able to accommodate it, depending on, because the more actual physical fenestration exists, then the layout becomes hampered. But we can move forward with spandrel in instances just to try and maintain the integrity.
May I ask a question, Sandra?
You may.
Thank you. It's Kim. I'd like to ask you, it seems kind of unfortunate that the character of the house was squeezed on its south side before by only 1 inch less than 2 feet. And I'm wondering about the decision when you move it, then to slam it right next to your building. So the relationship between your new building and this house really seems very unfortunate. And I was wondering if ever a scheme before, when in the history of this project, where you just basically allowed a little bit of landscape space on the south side of the building without trying to tie it into the lobby. This would be an opportunity to move it, to actually expose the south facade in a meaningful way. You can't see it through the lobby. It's just very obscure through there, and it doesn't really do justice. That's my question.
Peter?
When I look at the historical discussions, it wasn't something, in terms of isolation and separation of the building, could we separate it from the lobby? Yes, we could. The prospect of it, though, is if you think about structurally, and I think this is where the underground was sort of that pretense. We have a limited amount of space when it came down to the future development opportunity. The building, the heritage home and its future resting location does not sit on any of the structure. So the existing parking garage, what we're proposing is 2 sub-levels of garage. That garage avoids the heritage home. So, and when we thought about from a design perspective, there's really little to no opportunity based on the underground in order to accommodate and sort of landscaping on the south. So what we thought from a functionality point of view was embracing the heritage home and incorporating it into the design and having people I think the conversation over the course of time with Mr. Muller and Mr. Zimmerman was, the tactile approach, to have that feel, the actual physical connection with the brickwork and have that sort of element. And we're trying to find that balance, between external exposure and having people be able to utilize that space and occupy it. So because of that limitation in terms of the actual structural component, having that landscape component to the south was not practical.
Thanks, Grant.
Okay, are there other questions? Just for clarification for me, Peter, you don't own the Hakim Optical, do you?
Madam Chair, no, we don't.
Okay. Okay.
Quick question for me, Madam Chair. Do you plan on physically moving the building, Peter? Or taking it apart and reconstructing it?
Thank you for that question through you, Madam Chair. Yes, so we have a contractor. So Tribute Communities is a full service developer, meaning we have our own construction arm. However, we do sub out the work, right? So we have a contractor that we've hired to undertake, the cautionary bracing that will take place. They will lift the heritage home, place it on a steel structure, and then it would be moved cautiously in one motion to its future resting location. So there's a lot of work that would be required in terms of preparation, both internally, like I mentioned, to make sure that it's structurally sound. Those drawings are prepared, and it's something that we in the near future are going to be sharing with the city building department through the necessity for an alteration permit and through the necessity for even the foundation permit for its future resting location. So we handle that in-house, and the contractor is directly responsible to us, Tribute Communities.
Any other questions? Before we go to query staff, think of the inside, the outside, the underneath, the everything. Are there any other questions for Tribute before they go? Paul?
Just wonder on the side after it's rotated, is that a laneway? Is that a public laneway between the Heritage Building and Hakeem Optical?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is a private walkway. So it's really utilized as a fire escape for the tenants and residents of the Danforth Street properties. So on the ground, they're all commercial. They, for the most part, are residential tenants that are above. And our intent is to reinstate a gate on the just south of the Hakeem building. There's currently a gate there, and the Hakeem owner would like that gate reinstated. So it's they're overtly concerned about vandalism. They've been stressing. When I say we've been speaking with the 5 adjacent neighbors to the north. They've raised security concerns. So it's something that we've committed to ensuring that we'd be reinstating that security gate for the benefit of the residents and the commercial tenants.
So there will now be a gate beside the Heritage House with the blocked-in windows.
That's the proposal as it stands for the time being, yes.
And what will be the lighting on the Heritage Building?
It's our intent to have wall-mounted lighting so that the entire property would be well illuminated. What we could discuss with the adjacent neighbor is the prospect of having a visible gate, maybe something wrought iron would suffice, so that at least, pedestrians that are walking north and south on Main Street would have that visual connection to the heritage home and its future location. So that's not out of play. The only thing is it has to be secured based on our conversations with the neighbors.
Where does it lead, that lane, that path? It's not a public alley. It's belonging to 300 Main Street.
Yeah, the private laneway services the mixed-use properties, and it stubs at 2533 Danforth. So 2533 to 2547 Danforth. There are 5, actually it's 6, but 5 owners, 6 commercial blocks that have access to that private laneway.
So you have placed the Heritage Building wall on the property line, on your property line.
It's about a foot off, but the eaves-troughs, so the measurement was from the eaves-trough, so it's about a foot off the property line.
And how far does the tower, from the property line, does the tower begin? So halfway through the house on the east elevation?
No, I don't believe there's anything overhanging the heritage home. So the heritage home is free of podium and free of the tower. So our 4-story podium wraps to the west and to the south of the heritage home.
There is a tower, there is a one of our, there is some caissons. Oh, okay, so there's a view inside with a white cross beam, and then you have 2 pillars. So the foundation floor details where, so the new building meets the heritage building. Is that correct?
Correct. Only in the lobby and we're trying to position the location where that connection would be. We did explore at the roof line. It just visibly, it wasn't ideal, right? So I think the location that we're proposing, the internal connection from the lobby sort of meets in between where the process is and the window above it. So it was sort of the ideal positioning. And then from a maintenance perspective, with weathering and the ability to go in and do repairs as necessary, that was all taken into consideration in looking at the proposal that's before you.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Are we good now, board? Any other questions? Speak now or forever.
One quick one.
Yes.
It's a follow-up to moving the house. You said that there's no basement below this, the location where the house is going to be relocated. Does that mean that that home will be sitting on its own foundations in its relocated position? Or is there a possibility of extending the below-grade parking structure to the limits of the property and then allowing that structure to hold up or support the house, the heritage house?
Through you, Madam Chair, if we look at the diagram, there is a diagram that shows a little bit of a crawl space underneath, but the intent was that it would sit on its own foundations. And ideally, we would have loved to be able to recapture that space for the purpose of extending the garage. However, when we face the fact of moving, it would require the need to move the house twice. And we thought to ourselves, we made a commitment through city staff comments to move it once. And in order to move it once, it just has to be mutually exclusive from our development activity. And it also allows an opportunity to protect the home in its future location. To ensure that that there's as minimal risk to that home as possible.
So your intention would be to design and build the foundation for the home in its new location, then move the home to it, and then build the rest of the facility?
Correct.
Okay, now, are we, Frank, done? Everybody done? Okay, thank you, Peter. Okay, now we move on to questions of staff. No questions at all of staff. Frank?
One question, Madam Chair. because moving this home does require, indicate there'll be some risk, is there a letter of credit going to be required from the applicant so that if something does happen, there'll be sufficient funds to fix and or rebuild?
Staff, Mary, Guy, Liz, who answers that?
It's Mary, I'll answer that. Yes, we do. We are including a recommendation for a letter of credit for all the conservation work that's contained within the conservation plan, including the moving. While it is certainly always a risk to move a building, people are really good at it now, so we're confident. And the one move is really excellent from staff's perspective.
Any other questions of staff before we start our discussion so that it's clear? Going?
Seems,
Yes, Paul?
question staff, it seems to be just packed away on the farthest corner of the site out of, it's just not great. Can you comment?
I think it actually is very close to its original location, which is something that we try to maintain within all the applications. It had to, moving buildings is not something that's generally supported, but we do have official plan policies that indicate circumstances under which it's okay. So it's essentially shifting along the existing alignment, and it would have been part of a set of similar type buildings. So we felt move was acceptable, but it's going to become actually a landmark. So I'm not sure, Paul, if you're reading the drawings sufficiently, because it will be very, very visible on Main Street.
Yes, Guy Zimmerman here. So the visibility, as we've known it since the 20s, isn't really impacted that much. Ideally, it would have been moved straight north. Once I came to understand the original siting and orientation of the building, the 600 shift to the east wasn't as significant. The challenge was really to understand the relationship of that south elevation, which was only a more recent understanding of the significance of the house. That wasn't, I started looking at it from the Main Street elevation on the east and the adjacency to the Hakeem building. And because it had four obviously significant elevations, they're all addressed with the same architectural detailing. We wanted to make sure that all four elevations could remain visible in some sense. We didn't initially understand the significance of the south elevation, so that as that came to be understood, we tried to open up as much as we could. Initially, it was just making sure that you could sort of see bits of it, and then it was, well, how can we actually understand what used to be principal elevation addressing south to the landscape, and so that as you can see posed a challenge.
Any other questions of staff? Tamara, you need to speak.
I just want to give a compliment not only to the applicant, but also this was a property that literally no one saw because of the tree. Someone's done a very good Photoshop of covering out the tree itself, but this was a situation where a planning study of Danforth, we didn't capture this property until we extended this planning study to the south on Main. And I just wanted to say as a context that having that planning study really allowed us to explain the significance of this property, not only in its architectural, but in the context of the area. And I think that's not often revealed in individual designations to really appreciate that that's a very important part of it. And the other was that the Beaches Historical Society nominated this property when it came forward as a planning study, which is referenced in the report. So just to say that this could easily have been lost as a building. And I think the outcome is something that, while we can see nuances that are needed, it's something that I think 2 years of work has brought this to your table, for your consideration.
Thank you. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Thank you, staff. Discussion amongst us. Comments, please. Frank.
Second here. First of all, can't believe I'm saying this, but I'd like to thank the developer. This is actually, in my opinion, the best thing that could have been done with the heritage structure, given the limitations of the site, the rise of the bridge to the south, the nondescript laneways on the, I believe that would be the west side. I think this is an appropriate location. I'd be more concerned about the effects on the visibility of this structure when the Hakeem building is redeveloped, if it is. But I think they've done a pretty good job. I would suggest a plaque explaining to residents and to residents in the area why it's there and what its history is would be a nice add. And whatever they could do on the south side to minimize the structural column sizes so more of the home is visible from inside the new lobby would be appropriate. But other than that, I think this is a good solution.
Any other remarks? Comment? No one? Can I ask?
Sandra, I'm sorry, you don't see me leaving when I wait for him again.
You're far back. Everyone else is.
I know, I'm in our meeting room. I like being far back from the camera.
Okay.
But it's not good for hand waving. I just like to still reiterate that I think like the nature of this house and you know, I agree with Tamara. It's very wonderful that this is recognized. It really does stand out as a property along Main Street. I'm pretty familiar with Main Street, and this is a kind of lovely little jewel that's still there. I just feel it's unfortunate because of underground parking garage considerations. We've seen that this has been kind of pushed to the very, very northern corner, and then the building has jammed up. When you look at the section of how this new building is actually addressing itself to this building, it doesn't seem like a very polite or a respectful way of treating this building, which is one of the last remnants in this area that is of this stage. So I realize at this time of the process, again, not much we can do about it, but I just really want to register that I don't think that the treatment of this building, especially its south facade, is very respectful, and that the building's treatment of it is. I mean, any other project we actually do ask for setbacks for a building, and this when you look at the section, it climbs up into the ground floor, steps back a little bit, and then jams up again to the pediment on the south side. It is not a nice way of treating this building, and I maintain that point of view, and knowing that it's not going to make any difference. There you go. Thanks.
Kim. Anybody else? Okay, can I have a motion to receive this, can I have a motion for this report?
I'll move it, Matthew.
Matthew, and all in favor? Any opposed? It is carried. So we go on to the last one, and that is the Heritage Grant Award. Item 9. There going to be a staff introduction?
Actually, Sandra, Paul held this item down.
I know he held it down, but I just want to know if staff want to say anything first.
No, I think I'm not going to hold everybody up from their lunch. I'm really grateful to have been involved as a juror on this project. I learned an awful lot about 150-year-old technology for roofs and drainage, and I really want to thank the experts who were there, and including the local planning staff. I do really feel that we could do a better job of promoting the availability of this money, and number one, and number two, improving the amount of available funds for this kind of work. It's really terrific work, and I just move to receive the report unless people have other things to say.
Any other comments? On behalf of the annex, I'm thrilled. Matthew?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly say that I'm happy to see the grant that's going to the Bluffs refreshment room. It's it's been a building there at Kingston, and we haven't just been sitting there for many years, haven't seen much going on, and then recently, with the new owner, and from what I've heard, he's very interested in bringing it back up to good quality. So I'm glad to see that that's moving forward.
Any other comments? And we have a motion to receive the report. All in favor? It is carried. A motion to adjourn. All in favor? I'm putting it forward. Goodbye, guys. I'm really hoping that by August we can be in person again. But if not, see you in August.
Thanks for this. This worked out nicely.
Thank you to the clerks.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Attention, clerks.
Happy Canada Day.
Good to see everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Stay healthy. Can't leave.